Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Jackie. I am here for our second monthly Equipped Live event. This month, we're going to be speaking again with Greg Winter, but this time we're going to talk about, with all of the kind of crazy things that are happening in our world right now, what does that mean to the future of the IFMC? What does that mean for risk and reward and positives and negatives and all of those things? So we're going to dig into that topic. Just real quick, again, this is something that we're going to attempt to do monthly. Announcements will come out as we settle on future topics and times and dates. So we're going to get started right away by sending Greg to the video. Hi, Greg.
Hello, Jackie.
Hey, so
good afternoon, everyone.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in our world right now. I mean, we've got a war going on, we've got inflation. I know I've personally been waiting for a kind of a unique size water heater for my house for several months now. So there's supply chain. I just hope that my current water heater continues to work as loud as it is until that new one comes in. But there's just so much going on. Can you help us identify? I think this is where we'll start. Help us identify the things that you're keeping an eye on because of potential impacts to the IFMC.
Well, that's a great question, Jackie. And of course, there are a number of different forces at work out in the world right now. You know, everybody's familiar with COVID and the impacts that had, and some of those are remaining. So that's still of significant interest. Of course, COVID caused a lot of supply chain issues. And so those supply chain issues are very significant for our customers and for our vendors. That activity has certainly helped with inflation, and now inflation is getting noteworthy and something to be concerned about. In addition to that, we have the transition to green energy, and that's causing a number of issues. It's causing difficulties for some companies, but it's causing tremendous opportunities for others. So there's pretty massive changes going on around that. Of course, Industry 4.0 is expected to be another industrial revolution, and so that's of considerable interest as well. And then, of course, we can't ignore what's going on at the southern border and the impact that that's having. So lots of big events. We could spend the whole session on any one of those.
We absolutely could. And I think that most of the attendees here and those that will listen to this can probably understand what most of those are. But could you, as briefly as you can, talk about what Industry 4.0 is? It might be something that we dig into more in one of these sessions later, but just real brief if you could.
Well, Industry 4.0 really is the next series of significant changes with industrial production. And of course, we had the internet and the web that created a number of changes. Now the cloud is really being used, or the internet is being used to send signals between machines, between production facilities, and it's revolutionizing the way communication is done between machinery and the sensors and the ability to respond to what the sensors are telling us. So that is speeding up a lot of the transactions, speeding up a lot of the production, dramatically changing the way products will be manufactured.
Okay. So of all of these things that are happening right now, I know none of us have a crystal ball, even though we sometimes wish we did. Is there anything that stands out as potentially having a really positive impact for the future of the IFMC?
Yes. If we look back at how Omni got started, that was when Standard Conveyor went on strike. One of their customers needed conveyor. At the time, Omni was in the job shop fabricating business, but we started to build conveyor. And as soon as we figured out that we could be competitive with that, we ended up focusing on the sale of more conveyor, and of course that turned into Omni. Right now, that was one supply chain issue back in the early 80s. Today, we have numerous supply chain issues that all potentially represent similar opportunities for us. So, I think we really need to pay attention to where those supply chain issues are and which ones really have the potential to be the next standard conveyor Omni Metalcraft combination.
Well, and I think that's a great perspective to have, is let's find that opportunity out of this situation and not just, oh, it's doom and gloom, what's going to happen to us in this situation. So I can definitely appreciate that perspective. Is there anything in particular right now that's happening that is of top concern as potentially having a negative impact for the IFMC?
Potentially, yes. But I guess before we spend too much time on that, I'd like to go back to your comment about some of the positive things and how we respond to that. We can choose to either be on the defense or to be on the offense. And I really, really prefer the offense, but there are times when you have to be on the defense. And so if we look at it, maybe one example with COVID of a probably negative for certainly some businesses, if someone was in the popcorn manufacturing business and their sales channels were through movie theaters, their sales were impacted substantially when those theaters shut down and when customers weren't there eating the popcorn. They really didn't have much of a choice but to go on the defense, make sure that their costs, and I'm talking about the popcorn manufacturing company now, make sure that their costs stayed less than their sales. And if they were able to do that, then they had a chance of surviving. That's the defense side. On the offense side, they could choose to develop new market channels for the popcorn. Typically that takes time, it takes significant investment, and with this example of a popcorn company selling through theaters, that would be a very, very challenging that'd be a challenging situation to be on the offense. But there are a number of situations that exist, and we happen to be in one of those situations where, because most of our work is either build to order or small batch manufacturing or highly customized, we're able to adapt quite easily to changes in the market. And so when a supply chain issue hits, or when our customers have some sort of difficulties in getting product, we're uniquely positioned to be able to help them out. So there are lots of positive opportunities, and I choose to be on the offense. If we do insist on talking about the negatives, though, there are some big negatives out there. And if you look at the biggest negatives would probably also be big negatives for the world. And if you look at history of the world, the things that typically cause the most disruption at a world level have been either wars, pandemics, or natural disasters. And it turns out, of course, we just had a pandemic. That's not, I hope it's over, maybe not. We've got the Ukrainian-Russian war going on right now with many, many countries involved in that. They may not be shooting, but they're involved financially, they're involved politically, etc. And so that's going on, and that has the probability or the possibility of getting pretty serious. And I know of situations where that has caused significant disruptions. I know the folks personally that were involved. And then if we look at the natural disasters, some people, and I know this is kind of politically charged, and I'm not taking a position on it, but some people believe that global warming is a natural disaster. And there are a lot of people that are responding as though it's a natural disaster. So it's very uncommon to have a war, a pandemic, and a natural disaster all happening concurrently, but we are kind of flirting with that now. And so, I mean, there's some pretty high risk, but I look at what's the probability of that happening, and I don't think that's a high probability that all three are going to combine to make a really ugly situation. What's the impact if it does happen? Devastating. But even if it's devastating, if you are agile and you're adaptable like we are, you can be on the offense and you can make good things out of that.
Yeah, so you said a lot there that I wish we had time to really unpack some of that, but I think, and I don't like focusing on negative either, so I understand how difficult that is to kind of go that route, but I think it'd be unrealistic of us to just ignore that there are things that potentially could have negative impacts. But I think the key thing for those listening and for others who will watch this later to recognize is that these organizations are really set up to be agile and to respond in situations as to what we're experiencing right now. So I think that would lower the risk for organizations that are set up like this that can be agile and change accordingly. Is that an accurate assessment?
Yes, I would agree with that. The probably more important than the organization, though, is the culture. And
Mm-hmm.
so we have within the IFMC, we have a culture of adaptability. And so, if you look at the history and you look at the things we've adapted to, partly because of the organization and the numerous small teams, but we have a lot of folks in the organization that are highly adaptable, high achievers, and that's a word that a author by the name of Max McEwen uses in a book called Adaptability, and he talks about the value of having highly adaptive high achievers in an organization and the damage that it does if you have low adaptability, low achievers. And so that is a helpful way to kind of think this thing through. With our organization, we do tend we try to organize around teams of 7 so that you've got small teams. Each of those small teams have, at a transaction level, have a considerable amount of autonomy. And now you can have less experienced folks in teams of 7 that can do some pretty amazing things. We have a portfolio, we have several portfolios of those teams of 7 in essence. And so, if you look at maybe a baseball analogy, that enables our organization to start people out in T-ball, maybe go to Little League, the high school ball, college ball, all the way to the pros, and maybe World Series level. And it turns out we need that. We need to play at the World Series level. We're selling to lots of Fortune 500 companies, lots of international companies, and that's what they expect. And if you look at our growth and how we've thrived with those, I can't come to any other conclusion than that we do have World Series level players that are playing the game very well. So
I would agree with that. And so we're going to go over just by a minute or two. So hang tight, everybody that's watching. So I want to just end with this. I know you. I know that you do care deeply about the people that are in these organizations. And so that, your responsibility here is not just you by yourself. You care about these over 1,000 people that are employed by the organizations. So how do you not let all of those unknowns of what's happening and all that potential risk, how do you let that or not let that keep you up at night?
Well, some might say I'm too dumb to stay awake, but uh, yeah, I trust that we have good people, and we do have good
Mm-hmm.
people. So you need to trust them, and by organizing in the small teams, people have more autonomy. They make mistakes, but they can recover from them more quickly, and uh, they're in positions to just keep making today just a little bit better than yesterday. And so if we can have a majority of the people in the organization making today a little bit better than yesterday for themselves and for the organization and for the customers, we'll continue to do okay. We may have some significant setbacks, but I think we'll not only survive it, I think we'll thrive through it. And in history, some of our best years have been in some of the most difficult economic times. So I trust the folks we have, and I think we'll do fine.
I think that's a really powerful message for especially some of the new people to this culture here that maybe haven't felt that yet, to let them know that they are trusted to be part of this culture and help make this place thrive, and so they are trusted with that responsibility. So do you have anything else that you'd like to add to this conversation?
I just want to thank everyone for all the grit and determination and hanging in there through COVID. I mean, you look at how we came through that and how our people came through it, and it certainly wasn't easy, but I'm just really, really proud and pleased that that was handled the way it was. And if I look at it, do we have the will and the grit to win in a tough situation? Yeah, I think we've proven that. Are we more adaptable than most of our competitors? Yeah, I believe that. So we'll be fine.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we will be fine. So, Greg, thank you again so much for your time. For everybody listening, we'll get the word out about next month's event. As always, if you have ideas for topics, I mean, we've got plenty, but if there's something that you'd like to hear, just let us know. And everybody have a great evening. Again, Greg, thank you.
Thank you, and have a good evening.